Hi and welcome to another episode of eCommerce One. And today's guest is Glen Fisher, founder of All Good Copy and author of Art of the Click. How you doing, Glen?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Now, me and Glen were just having a little chat, and it seems that Glen is literally about, 40 minutes away, so not too far away, which is quite a surprise for both of us, I think. It's not very often we get somebody from the Shire on the podcast, although we've had a few. But welcome to the podcast, Glen.
Thank you. I used to, when I was younger and slightly less haggard looking, I used to look a lot like Frodo from the thing. So when you say the Shire there, it's quite triggering for me. But yeah, no, it's rare to, I speak to people all over the world. So it's nice to, and normally when I say where I'm from, it's like just silence and kind of dust bowls.
Next question,
But yeah, no, to hear someone in Lincoln, it's good.
Yeah, good to have you on the podcast. I think it'd be good to kick off and let the listeners know a little bit about your background, Glen, and bring us up to date with what you're doing at the moment.
So the long story, relatively short, is I was born. No, I basically wanted to be an accountant and work in business and finance and all the kind of things that you have real A levels for. Did that, and I ended up working in the council, North East Links Council. For a while, was training as an accountant, doing all this stuff. And then somewhere, probably like 2 or 3 years in, I've lost all track of time. None of the chronology makes sense with how old I am, but I was there for about 5 years, I think. And then something broke in my mind where I just didn't like it anymore and was like, I don't want to be doing this. Yeah. So and in that time, I'm still trying to figure it out. And one day for the memoirs, we'll work out an official version. But I'd started writing, and I liked the act of writing. I liked the creative nature of it, and it just so happened that they were launching a creative writing course at the local college in Grimsby, which is where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I didn't, because I'd got so far in life and was kind of mildly professional, I didn't fully want to kind of stop that and all this kind of stuff. I didn't want to move away and become a uni student, but because it was in Grimsby, for some reason I ended up quitting the job and became a mature student. I think I was about 25, 23 or something like that, and did this creative writing course, 3 years of that, and then realized that if I wanted to write, at the time I knew nothing about like the industries that we work in now, certainly didn't know anything about copywriting. Really just wanted to write book reviews for The Guardian and that kind of, and then write novels in an ivory tower. That wasn't happening. In Grimsby, the only writing job I was aware of was for the Grimsby Evening Telegraph. So I started looking outside of the Shire and was going to look at Manchester actually. Okay. Oh, what's going on here? Thankfully, my mum was a sensible person and understood that I was about to get a rude awakening, that it was quite hard out there in the world. But I ended up moving to London, and by pure chance, this is where it all accelerates very quickly, I ended up getting a job as a junior writer for a company called the Agora, who are a financial publisher. There are a lot of things, but we'll say they're a financial publisher who happen to use direct response marketing as their main way of getting new leads and new customers. And I went down there as a junior writer. I was very lucky to be employed by a madman who was utterly insane and crazy and a lot of fun and inspiring. And very also lax. He kind of, was I meant to be a copywriter, an editor, or what have you? So was I meant to be doing the sales writing or writing the actual content? And he said, well, try them all and see how you get on, and then we can decide. Now, I ultimately never decided, but managed to learn all of those different things. So I ended up in this company and discovered this world. And through that company, it was owned and run by a chap called Bill Bonner and his partner in business, a guy called Mark Ford, who happened to be two of the best direct response copywriters in the world. It's a giant company that has offices.
It's got a US.
It's predominantly US. And so I was very lucky that at the time, just as I started, they happened to be in the UK to kind of focus on that business, and I managed to get taught directly by them, and was kind of one of the last kind of new people to the company to have that direct thing with them, which was great. And I discovered writing to sell, I would say. Obviously I was doing editorial, but I leaned towards the copy. It's a long story, and I'm sure we'll get on the debate of, we touched on it before we started recording, about where does copy lie and what is copy really. The elements of persuasion in writing are universal, whether you're writing a novel or a Facebook ad. You need to persuade and convince people and engage them. So I worked there for about a decade, let's round it up, and then I went freelance. Still write for Agora, but also now write for companies all over the world, big multinational brands, writing tone of voice documents, but also write long sales letters and Facebook adverts, PPC, all this kind of stuff. So I basically do whatever I get.
Do the work you fancy, and a whole mixture, whether that's direct response, whether that's, like, as you say, a smaller form, long form sales pages, the whole shebang by the sound of it. So many things buzzing through my mind with what you've said there. So I think how we got to know yourself we're big believers in sort of always be learning as a company and our team. And one of the books we got was Art of the Click. For a couple of the team a while ago, and they're like, oh my God, this book's so good, so good. And here we are, not a few months later on the podcast. So I think for the listeners, maybe tell us about the Art of the Click.
Sure. So at the end of my time with Agora, I also got a deal to write this book and publish the Art of the Click. Which is unfortunately named after Trump's The Art of the Deal. It was never meant to be. It was a joke title. I had like clickable in my mind or something like that. But I wrote that down because we were watching a documentary about Trump, and the publisher came back and go, we really like this. And I was like, then my book's based on Trump's book. Anyway, less said about that than that. But so I basically put this book together. It was like the best way to think about it is it's my 10 years of studying and learning direct response copy. Everything I learnt during my time at Agora, and all of the many sales letters I wrote, which generated millions and, I was going to say trillions, but that's probably a lie. But it's certainly a few million dollars and pounds for that company. And I've been writing bits and doing blogs and kind of brought it all together, put a theme around it and figured it out. And then at the time, I also was very aware, as I started working outside of Agora as well and working for different companies, I'd always been very much a direct response man. And I'd kind of believed in that world and thought there was this or that and what have you. And I realized at the time that everything I'd learned about direct response copywriting was helping me enormously with companies who were looking to market, not necessarily with what is traditional direct response, even indirect response stuff and branding and, as I say, tone of voice stuff and all that kind of, the principles all applied. So I kind of brought that book together and gave it that overall arc of suggesting that the lessons you can learn from studying direct response copywriting can help you with all elements of marketing.
So for some of the guys that are listening might be like, obviously we've mentioned direct response. What's the sort of the quick version of what is direct response?
Sure. The easiest way to think about it is there's two types of advertising. There's either direct or indirect. Direct response, or rather, let's start with indirect. That's where you see a poster in the shop or on the tube or on the market raisin station, shall we say, to be appropriate. See a poster there, and it's got a nice naked man drinking a Diet Coke, looking quite hot and sexy, and you think, oh, that looks good, nice one. You don't do anything. You need to go to the gym. But you don't do anything, but they're hoping that next time you're in the shop, you have an indirect response to that advert and think, oh, actually, I am thirsty, I'll have that Coke. Direct response would be seeing the same advert, possibly, but in a magazine, and at the bottom it says, if you want to buy a Coke, a Diet Coke, you need to fill in this coupon and send
Go
it.
here. It's an action.
So it's a direct response. Yes. So it's any form of advertising that has a direct call to action.
Yeah.
Though, as I say, I would kind of put that disclaimer in that increasingly, as I think about persuasion and copy and get older and kind of more obtuse, I think it kind of, everything has that direct response.
And I think that's the takeaway there, is that the guys that are listening to this episode, the guys that listen to our podcast, you know, the majority of you are thinking of or are selling a product online, and you are trying to persuade in a different way, you know, in different ways for them to buy from you that particular product from your particular site, store, brand. And obviously being able to, I think the key word you dropped in there a few times is persuading them, you know. So how can a marketer use copy to persuade and to increase sales? What are some sort of tips we can give the guys?
Sure. Well, I mean, as far as like, another great advantage I had when I worked with Agora and was kind of learning the craft of copy was that I happened to work with some very good marketers as well. Now, and we had that thing where I'm the writer, you're the marketer, and all this kind of stuff. But I remember, I think it was a Steven Pinker book I once read, but he described a T kind of shape as that everybody is a T shape, and you have across the top of the T you have sales, and then down the T you have either copy or marketing or what have you. So you're all the same, and you've got to learn all of those things. So in the same way a good copywriter will understand marketing and the principles thereof, for a marketer, if you can understand more about copy, about the language that's being used, then you're going to be a lot more effective in your job and do these things. So I think when it comes to how a marketer can use copy, A, is to remember that to always be testing, and that you will find that the words have an effect. We all know that. If I say, come here, you're going to have a very different reaction to that if I say go away. Like, they literally, I mean, it's fundamental, but that's how it works. Words, language changes what people do. So as a marketer, if you can change the words you're using in the marketing, so it might be that on a very granular scale. So if you're looking at a Facebook advert, for instance, you might have a proven image that's winning, but just by changing the button to say click here or to like go here might make a difference. Always be changing, looking to change your copy, test it. No one ultimately knows. Now, I get paid loads of money to write copy these days because I've kind of proven that I'm quite good at it. But at the same time, I'll openly admit, you don't fully know what's going to happen. You've got to test. So you can have instincts and you can know kind of where to test, but you never know. So always be testing and always be.
You can probably you can almost probably get. When we're doing anything in this business, we're like, oh, that was an 8. That was an 8 out of 10. That was do you know what? We can get a 9 out of 10. That was a 4 out of 10. And I think what you're saying there is, you know, you can probably straight out of the gate get a 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. But trying to get that 10 out of 10, you just don't know until you test.
It reminds me of a story. I was at like a writing retreat in France once, and with Bill Bonner, the owner of Agora, and he sat there, and someone got up and said, "Oh, here's my sales copy. It did really well." And everybody was like, "Oh, well done! You've done this really good sales copy. You've written this letter to encourage people to buy this thing." And everybody was clapping it except for Bill, who turned around and said, "Right, okay, so you think you have written the very best version of the most effective piece of copy in the world ever, just that you here now have done that. Of course you haven't. There is always an opportunity to improve it. So always be testing."
Yeah, I think that's where I guess we talk about mindset a lot in the business, you know, and the book mindset, you know, and always be taking that feedback, always be open to that feedback. Whereas to be a good copywriter, you've got to be open and not be, oh no, nothing needs changing. Well, there's always something, that you can work on and getting that feedback, listening to your users, your buyers, your customers, you know, and tweaking, checking, you know, there's some simple things there, I think. So obviously you worked on a lot. I mean, I've lost count of how many years that was, but I think it was 10 years at Agora.
Yeah, we'll say 10.
5 or 6 years, 7, 8 years doing your own thing.
I'm only 15, so I don't know how it works.
So at least a couple of 15, 20 years. So in terms of, you know, you no doubt you're writing copy from scratch. You're writing copy that, you know, you've been given to rework. You know, obviously there's different styles of projects where you're sort of no doubt, like I say, starting from scratch, or you're just looking at, it's like me saying, right, can you go through my site, potentially, my bit,
Sure.
Ecom One, go there and rewrite, or helpers and advisors. What would you say are some of the things that you see regularly? I don't know if you can be specific around product, trying to sell a product, a physical product, because that's a lot of our podcast listeners.
Sure.
Products.
Well,
What are some of the things you see time and time again that maybe
I think
help them?
It's hard to be specific, and obviously, actually ironic, because one of the best things you can do about writing copy is be specific, but it is hard to be specific. But I think there are frameworks that you can follow which will always help you. I think one of the things, it almost seems trite, and I hate talking about it really, but it is useful, and I think it's helpful, especially when you're in this kind of world of giving tips and what have you. My tips as I get older become increasingly boring, and generally I just read and write, which are just the fundamental kind of go-tos. But one thing I was taught, which was really interesting, was the 4 U's. Now, again, I hate acronyms. I hate all these things because everybody invents their own and what have you. But it's just the one I've been taught, I've found useful, and if people haven't come across it, it might help them. But when you're looking at, so if you go into a website, a product website, and you're trying to understand why aren't people clicking on that particular page, why aren't they reacting to that product, why aren't they doing that? The copy itself, whether it be the headline or whether it be the product copy or what have you, obviously it gets a bit vague and you can't be too specific, but you need to look at that copy using the 4 U's, and they are useful. So is the copy useful? Does it have any urgency to it? Does it have a uniqueness to it? And does it have specificity? Now, because that obviously doesn't begin with a U, the American inventors of it turn it to ultra specificity. So you've got urgency, usefulness, uniqueness, and ultra specificity, which I can't say. It's been annoying when I'm talking about the 4 U's and presentations and whatever. But if you look at things, if you look at your copy and say, well, is it, why isn't this working? Has it got, it doesn't need to have all of those. And again, a disclaimer, some of the greatest copy in the world doesn't have any of them. But when you're looking for ways to improve stuff, you can't just kind of go, improve it, and go, what about this? So you look for these frameworks. And if you go through it, is it useful? What is it? Is there an implicit use to the reader? Do you need to make it more explicit what the use is? Obviously, if it's just not useful, if there's no reason to read it, then why are they going to read it? So they're going to turn on. Is it unique? This is obviously the big one. This is where you start going to the actual, you can look at it 2 ways in the message. Is the message that you're making unique, or is the actual product unique? If it's boring and it's not going to, you might need to.
You've also got that from an agency point of view. You've got that SEO element there as well. If it's unique copy, it's fresh, new.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than copied or
rather just the million same lines that you're trying to fight with. It's not going to work. So look, if it's unique, one way of making it unique and helping to make it unique is to be ultra specific. If you can, the example is always, rather than just talking about a gun, you talk about a Walter PPK, because when you go unique, when you go specific, you start to connect on different levels, and you're ultimately, all of this is trying to get an emotional response and trying to get there. So if I say there's a gun, you go, all right, there's a gun. If I say there's a Walter PPK, you're probably going to think of James Bond. You're going to start having these things and emotional connections. And then I can't remember. Oh, urgency. Again, this is always a dangerous one. You shouldn't do it if there's no urgency. Don't create false scarcity or anything like that. But is there a way? Is there a reason they have to do something now and react to that copy now? So those 4 things are always useful to help transform existing copy, especially when you're looking at a website. And I imagine what some of your listeners are looking at those specific things. The other big thing, for longer bits of copy, but if you've not come across it, I won't try and explain it here because it's an incredibly boring thing to listen to, but something called the FK score, and it's just in Word, so it's free and easy to get. There's a few apps, and then there's like Hemingway app and all this kind of stuff these days that tell me I'm writing badly, but I use this old thing called the FK score. It's the Flesh Kincaid score. It was invented in America for during the war. They were trying to figure out levels of how old people were to read stuff or what have you, you can read on it online. But if you just have a search for the FK score, if you go on my website, you'll find articles about it. But that basically, if you run that test and you see that your FK score is too high on that piece of copy, it is proven, and I'll just, as I say, rather than like giving you loads of evidence for it, trust me. Never listen to a salesman.
Trust me, I'm a copywriter.
Yeah, trust me, I'm a copywriter. But yeah, there's loads of evidence that suggests that the chances are that the reason the score is high is because you don't quite know what you're saying. You're using longer words, more complicated sentences, all this stuff. So if you can get that down, that will invariably make the copy more focused and easier to read for the reader. So I think before using that FK score will help anybody assess existing copy.
Make it more readable, easier to consume, maybe rather than a lot of. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, it's a topic I'm fascinated with, but at the same respect, I actually think I'm quite bad at. But when I actually get into it, I'm not too bad, but it's getting me into it.
Yeah, sure. There's all different things. I mean, like when you talk about SEO content and stuff like that, like if you think of a blog post or like an article or something like that, the other thing to do, largely it seems to me these days that increasingly as Google and what have you become more aware and more effective at delivering their aim of getting you to the most valuable content that you're going to spend the longest looking at, you need to engage people on the page. One of the ways you can do that with copy invariably is just delete the first few lines. Most people, when they sit down to write something, especially if they're not writers, especially if you're tasked maybe as a marketer or a product creator or something, or someone who's got to just kind of write that blurb, you think as you start to write. So you're thinking and you're writing and you're getting your thoughts down on the page first, which invariably is boring. So when you get into it and you know what you're writing about, then you start kind of getting a bit more exciting. So invariably, if you do the thumb test of just getting rid of the first paragraph, you'll find that you drop in that kind of Quentin Tarantino thing where you drop into it.
I think it's a bit like doing a speech, isn't it, in a way? Well, I think it is. I do quite a lot of various talks and this, that, and the other, and it's like, well, what I'm going to talk about? Well, I've got a feel for it, and I've done some slides, but I don't really know exactly. And then I sort of introduce myself, and I'm like, right. And then it's actually, normally it ends up all right, I think.
Yeah, well, there is the side thing where if you've got a good personality, you can get away with it on speeches, but is,
I guess that's like my framework.
But I always open with for me, I imagine it was probably Aristotle or somebody who said it, but starting in the middle, doing that thing, just start with start somewhere in the middle, so it's exciting.
Yeah, you've already gone up a notch or two with the enthusiasm and
it's a free hit if you do that.
So
you get all the boring stuff in later.
So e-commerce store, you've got a lot of products, obviously a lot of product pages and that's that type of thing. But obviously what you've got on every e-com store, like you have every website really, is what I would refer to more like brochure pages, about us, our story. And I personally think those pages are so key, getting that personality across, the history of the company. Any sort of ideas, tips around what people can do for that?
Yeah, ignore any of my websites because I don't practice what I preach. My about pages is terrible. But I agree with you, and I think they should be. One thing I would say, for me, and in the experience I've had with various different clients, the biggest problem with about pages is that they are about the company, and it comes crushing. It's a crushing blow to the founder who's really excited about his product and what have you, but no one really cares about your company. No one cares that in 1951 you were founded on the field in Laos and what have you, and no one cares. They will care about it eventually, and you will have your opportunity to do that when they're fully engaged in things. But in the world of a website where you're landing on it, you've got 3 minutes and you've got to try and figure out what's going on because all of a sudden there's 20 other emails, Instagrams, and all this stuff. You need to be quick. So you need to turn, for me, this is base level stuff, or like the easiest thing to do straight away, is just turn everything to the reader. It's a cliche, everybody talks about it, but copywriting is ultimately about you. It's every opportunity needs to be you saying, you the reader, how can we help you? So your about us page really should be about how we can help you. You can still talk about yourself and all and what
Yeah.
have you, but direct it to the reader, and look at that in every page of website. What is it in it for the reader? Also, I realized working on a few websites a little while back actually, that very few, and this is a new thing actually, to be fair, I certainly didn't invent it, but the whole movement towards UX and like user design and what have you, user experiences, as a copywriter, as a marketer, as anyone involved in that decision of what you're going to publish and show online and how you're going to get people to engage with you, you need to be thinking, what is that user, what is that customer, what is that reader, what are they experiencing in that very moment, and what are they doing? And if you think about it, if you just, and this is the ultimate disclaimer with every piece of advice I always give, is the advice is really easy. It's just having the discipline to actually do it. If you sit down and go, how does this person feel and think, you will suddenly realize that a lot of the kind of suggestions and what have you on the website, what you think you're saying, oh, they're going to definitely click this thing, they're not. It's not actually framed like that. It's leading them away to something else, or it's saying something else, or it's actually just talking about you. You need to think, where are they? What would they do if they were to follow what I want them to do, and guide them in that way? So it really is just trying to look at your website not as a way to advertise yourself, but as a way to provide a solution. That's one solution. I hate using the word solution, but I'll allow myself one in this conversation. But
the
provide
one next step sort of thing.
Yeah, just how does it benefit the reader? Ultimately, everything about copywriting and ultimately about marketing and selling is how does it benefit the reader? And if you can turn every page on your website to that, you will see increased conversion.
Oh, great. I think that's there's the right snippet there for our promoting the podcast there. Fantastic. So what would you say is the difference, sort of probably going back a little step, but what would you say is the difference between copywriting and content marketing?
I've got some very vague notes here, which you can see here if you're watching this, but and I've just written there isn't one. But there is. That's me again becoming obtuse and old and like worn down by the industry of these years. I don't believe there is a difference between copywriting and content marketing, in the sense that I feel like the wrong definitions, in the sense that no one really knows what a copywriter is. There's copywriters who go around saying they're copywriters who write content. There are copywriters who go around saying all they do is have ideas and for out of house advertising and all this kind of stuff. So the copywriting is just writing to sell. So content marketing, what is the aim of content marketing? It is to sell. Like, let's make no bones about it. You're putting content out there so that people will go, hey, I found that quite valuable and useful. I might buy this thing.
Maybe a fan's just another way.
Sure. So, and it comes back to that kind of definition thing where it's like, is it direct response marketing or indirect response? Am I this kind of marketer or this kind of marketer? Ultimately, you're there to try and convince someone to do something. How you do that? One way is content marketing, and that is providing value to the reader. How do you provide value to the reader? You have to do it. You can't just go hit, like we're living in COVID times at the moment where people are being told you are going to get ill if you don't do this thing, but people go, I'll go and do this thing. How do you do that? How do you get people to act in their best interest? Sometimes you need to engage them. You need to do it in a nice way, in an engaging and intelligent way. So for me, good copywriting is essential for good content marketing. You can't do good content marketing unless you have an understanding of copy and how to better persuade and provide value and engage people. So I don't think there is a difference between, I think it's my word, like the definitions, someone will make a lot of money one day or write a book. I've got too many others to write at the moment, but that figures out how to like properly define these terms.
Would you say then that you've seen, I've been doing this almost as long as you. No, not copywriting, but in the sort of thing. And I've probably been on the other side of the fence more, as in buying the thing. You've been writing to sell stuff, and I've been buying stuff for copy. buying. I think I cleaned my office out at home this last few weeks. We're having to do a few jobs at home, and my office is like a dumping ground. And it's a dumping ground for all the sort of information products I've bought over.
Sure.
I think Armand Moran was one of the guys.
Oh wow, I saw him. This is going to sound like I'm some kind of jet setter, but I saw him in Las Vegas.
Hey.
He used to do like a big seminar. Was it called like the big seminar or something?
It was, yeah, it was.
I think it was the last one he did.
I went to Vegas myself. Here we are.
Oh, there you go.
Vegas, yay.
We should have had
I went out to see a few of the other guys that are in that sort of group, if you like. This is probably about 10 years ago. When I was well into it by then, but what I'm driving at or getting to is obviously the sort of sales, long form sales, very text heavy, long form sales copy, selling, information products, which were on CD back in those days. I've got these piles of CDs. I've had to chuck the box sets away because there's just no room in the house. So that's what I was doing last week. And I've got all these Armand Moran CDs, Butterfly Marketing from Mike Filsame and all these guys.
Yeah.
But I think, the question would be is, have you seen quite a change over the last sort of 5 years and more recently? And just, because there's a way to persuade, which is quite frankly, it's like, whoa, what is all that about? And I think, no disrespect to any nationality, but I think there seems to be a certain pivot in the US of, I read some of the copy, like, what?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's funny. Has it changed? Yes. It's changed and it hasn't changed. I've literally just got off a call where I'm writing another one of those letters for someone I've just written on for an American company. Yeah. So you can still do that and what have you, but and all that stuff is there that for time immemorial. People will love information products and want to know. Do you know something I don't? What's your secret? That's what ultimately is under all of that. To unpick all of that, the American versus English kind of thing, there's some differences there. I'm less inclined, having written for America so much, spent so much time there at things like that, seeing your Tony Robbins and what have you. Yeah. I always tell a story when I do a talk of the time I saw Tony Robbins in the UK, and I thought this man is going to like struggle in it because British people are all there with a cup of tea and what have you. Yeah. He was not. He absolutely killed it, and people loved it. And I was like, "Wow, right? Okay, the Brits can kind of go crazy as well." But so that's I think persuasion and stuff. It's fundamental as a human thing. There are different nuances to that. The changes though that I think I've seen, it links back to what we were talking about content marketing, and my trouble with content marketing as a phrase was when it kind of blew up a bit recently in the last kind of couple of years, maybe 5 years more. But for me, that was just more direct response marketing, was that you talk to people constantly. So that's how you do it. Those long letters that we're referring to, and I still write today, they work because people like reading, and they like reading stuff. They like finding out more information. Yeah. Now, if you're not interested in that particular thing, then it will be hell to read that letter. In the same way that I don't like Harry Potter, so I'm not going to read 7 books of Harry Potter's nonsense. Yeah. But a lot of people love Harry Potter and they read all of that. They don't complain going, I wish they were a lot less. They want more. They want more Harry Potter. People only complain at bad copy or copy that don't relate. Yeah. So the principle, what I'm trying to say is, in the same way that it has changed. I think you've seen it broken up a bit. You'll see longer copy letters now broken up as a piece of content marketing. So you might get part 1, part 2, part 3. Yeah. If you could actually just put that together and it's
a lot more imagery, a lot more graphical UX work.
Ultimately, it's just trying to find different ways to engage. Yeah. And as I say, I think, I mean, if I wanted to be a little bit kind of stood on the pillar and the high mountain kind of thing, I think it might be because the longer copy isn't as good as it used to be, because people don't study it anymore, because it takes ages. But I'm fully aware that I sound like some kind of old grunt going, well, I did 10 years in the thing.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't think people put the effort into it anymore. And
it is a work of art when I sit and see some of these new information products that come out, or just in general, the sort of the bigger marketers that I know are no doubt paying for people like yourself and whatnot, and I sort of love reading them, reading the
Yeah,
sales.
well,
What
they
do.
are an art form themselves.
I try my hardest not to buy anything. I'm pretty good now. I think I'm slightly cured on my habits of the older days of.
Yeah, read it backwards. That's the best way. So the first 6 pages, they're the emotional hook. That if they got you emotionally, you're dead. That's the so just read it backwards. Like, see what the product is first. That's my tip.
So, last few questions then, Glenn.
Sure.
What advice would you give to an aspiring writer, someone that's looking to get into the industry?
Again, this is where I've increasingly realised I always try and be really practical with my advice, but I've just kind of at the same time boiling stuff down. But it's just, you've got to read. Like,
yeah,
I feel like it's a public service thing. Like, you just got to read loads. If you want to be a writer, you have to read more than you write.
Yeah.
I would also, and the flip side of that is another boring piece of advice, but try and write something every day. Like, you just, whatever it might be, just like write a little crazy idea, a story or something, like, even if it's 500 words. But if you want to be a writer, you need to write that. Like, writing's horrible. I hate writing. The actual process of writing is horrible. Yeah. My brain thinks faster than my hands can type, so it's like a chore and editing and all this kind of stuff.
I read back what I've written on the keyboard, and it's like, that doesn't even make sense, because my brain's
so no one likes to do that. Like, you like the stuff around it, and you like the ideas before. To an aspiring writer, in the copy sense, spend more time thinking about the idea. And this goes back to me being a bit curmudgeonly about people not putting the time in these days, but the best long copy letters work because underneath there is a really good idea that you just want to know about, that inherently makes sense. So I encourage people, the book is structured in such a way that I think the first like 100 pages is before you even write a single word. Like, I get trapped myself sometimes, because we all work in a business world where you've got to get stuff done by this day, what have you. I'm very lucky, and I'm grateful for it, that people have figured out that if you let me not write and think, then you'll get better writing eventually. So I'm lucky in that, and I realize people are often like push for time or what have you, but just try, even if you've like only got 2 hours to write a piece, at least try and give yourself at least 15 minutes just to think about it. Don't sit there in front of a blank screen. That's murder. That's just self-harm. Like, it's ridiculous. Figure out what you're going to write, and then I literally do advise physically running at the machine or the notepad and get energetic on it. Like, once it's in your head, run, and that
stepping back initially, finding some time, finding that.
So I would say that, and as I say, just read. There's so much advice out there, people looking at it. I would probably say, this will come as well, I think, a later question, but don't get stuck reading and about stuff in your industry. And that's, don't get me wrong, read all the books on copywriting, read mine if you like. But if whatever industry, read all the marketing books, read all the books on your particular niche, fine, but don't just read those. Read as widely as possible. If you want interesting ideas and you want to figure out how to engage people, you need to be able to talk about other stuff, like, because everybody knows your stuff, so talk about other stuff.
Yeah, good. So in terms of other resources and other training courses, what, any sort of things that jump out that you'd recommend? Obviously, you've got your own things. Let's talk about those.
Oh no, ignore mine. This far better. The training course, I've written life because I'm annoyed. When I first started at Agora, I was that is part of something. They've got like a side company called the American Writers and Artists Institute or something. They do an accelerated course. That's the only course I've ever taken. In terms of copywriting, because it was the firm's course, so I did it and kind of followed it, and I found it useful. Ultimately, it was copying out long copy sales letters and learning by rote, and then trying to do it yourself. So I've got to be. I don't know any courses really that I've come across that I've thought, oh yeah, that's actually really good. For me, it's just been a case of learning on the job. I'm always a big fan of that. Just like try it. Nothing's going to break. You can't break things and what have you. So just experiment, but also, as I say, read as widely as possible, but outside of the industry.
I think that's a great one.
And also, as far as resources for copywriting and marketing go, your biggest resource, I'm saying this is a kind of standout thing, I'm not sure if I can back it up, but I think it might be right. Your biggest resource is your customer. Like they have all of the answers to all of your questions, because they are the only person you're interested in is trying to figure out how they're going to buy your thing. So if you can get to the customer service department, if you've got like an email inbox full of questions going, this is crap because of this, read them, figure out why. Like it hurts, but you've got to read all that stuff. So
that's great.
Training wise, like, don't bother reading, oh, this is how you could learn to do this thing. Just go and see what the customer says.
Get in and find the real nitty gritty of their problems, what their concerns are.
It will accelerate your understanding a lot faster.
Fantastic. So I always like to end every episode on a book recommendation. If you had to choose one book for our readers, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be on copywriting. It doesn't have to be on, it can be on anything whatsoever. What is your one book, Glenn?
I do this on my own podcast where I always say, like, you've got to pick the one. I always preface it with, you're not allowed to just like, you've got to say what's straight on your mind without trying to be cool. So I will say what's straight on my mind, and it's because it's most recently I've read it. I just read, it's Rashomon and Other Stories. So it's a collection of short stories by a Japanese writer called Ryansuke Atagawa. I think that's how you say it. And this sounds like I'm being like, oh my God, he said like a cool Japanese writer thing. Like, I'd not read this for ages. Like, Rashomon is like, it's a famous film by Akira Kurosawa. So I should have done, but I hadn't. But I read a thing where one of the stories called In a Bamboo Grove is like, it's taken from all different perspectives. And I was interested. That's something I'm working on at the moment in a creative sense, not copy, but. And anyway, I read this book, and it's written by this Akutagawa guy. And the reason I will pick that, and the reason I would encourage everybody to go, some people like, oh, go and try that, and go, what the hell is this? The reason I liked it is it was written kind of like end of 1800s into like early 1900s, but it feels so incredibly modern, and it feels like it was written like yesterday. And what that does, and why I think that's important, is because it makes you can engage with it, and it's universal. Like, I read, I don't know, Jane Austen, or like even Dostoevsky or something. Like, everybody's meant to like read this stuff. I read it, I'm like, I can't engage with this. Like, there's something wrong with me, and I realize that. But like, I just don't engage. Where I read this, and I was like, hang on a minute, old writers can engage with you when it's written in this style. So I think it's really important to analyze that kind of writing. Why is it? And you'll see. I imagine if you ran the FK score through it, it'd be really low, because it's clip sentences, it's little like short things, simple language, all of that stuff that classics like Orwell and everything talks about. But I just really enjoyed it. It kind of touched all of my novelist ambitions and all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong, creatively interesting. But then just the form was really good. And I think, as I say, read, like, I think you can see it on the video, but half of these books here are all business books. So I've got this big bookcase full of business books, but the rest in my entire house are all absolutely nothing to do with copywriting. Read all the books on copy, go and do it, but read other stuff. I've realized that more and more, because people, if you notice, when you're looking at articles out there, when you're looking at tips and advice, they're all the same. And it's because everybody's reading the same thing.
And that same
lessons come from elsewhere. Lessons come from your kitchen bin, and like how you act with your partner, and the fact that you're doing this, and it's behavioral. So look around for other stuff. Read Atagawa if you.
We'll link that up in the show notes so everyone can.
Yeah, good luck.
I was thinking I might have to press play a few times on the replay just to catch that one. So for the guys that are listening, want to find out more about you, Glenn, what's the best place to connect with you and find out more about what you do? And
you can go to allgoodcopy.com, which is not being updated because I'm working on a novel at the moment, so I've kind of got lost in that. But there is loads of stuff on there. That's got my email on it and what have you. I think I use Twitter quite a lot at allgoodcopy, which you can find me on there. You can email me you can find me on the internet. You can probably find me at home, but you're not coming in my house because
that's
I'm not allowed. But normally you might be able to come and have a pint. I don't mind if you can come. But yeah, no, you can find me there. Obviously, you can find the book on Amazon and what have you.
Yeah.
And that has my contact details in it as well. I'm a strong believer in advertising, copywriting, marketing being an ongoing conversation. It changes all the time in many regards. A lot of stuff stays the same, but you've got to keep learning, as you said earlier on. If you stop learning, you start kind of you're going to get taken over by someone else.